Hello and welcome, my name's Dychronic, and today, taking a look at my top 10 PvE heavies in Destiny 2 Season of the Seraph. And hopefully by the end of this video, you'll have a very good understanding of the Destiny 2 PvE heavy meta as it applies to raids, nightfalls, general PvE, for DPS, for total ammo damage, and utility. By the end of this, you should know what to use and why. And of course, all of this is accompanied by my DPS spreadsheets that includes the damage testing of all the different weapons I considered for this video, which can still be found at my Discord server, link in the description down below. And if you are new to Destiny 2 or you've never seen my spreadsheets before, I do have a spreadsheet tutorial, link in the description down below. It'll just give you an idea of why things work, how things work, and what to look for. And of course, these spreadsheets are not possible without my patrons on Patreon. So if you like these spreadsheets or these videos or what I'm doing here, please consider checking out, link in the description down below. And I'm sure that the cute animals on screen have nothing to do with the fact that you're still watching this part, but thank you for watching this part, as it does mean a lot. Without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. On screen right now, this is my spreadsheet. All the dark theme, color-coded recommendations, catalyst information, all the whatnot for all the weapons I considered, as well as on the right side, the DPS calculations, which is obviously one of the best parts, and I feel really giddy as a nerd. I like the math. And at the very bottom, there are some charts, which should help you in understanding this stuff a little bit more. And we'll talk about this right here a little bit later. First up, for the only honorable mention today, we have the Adaptive Frame Legendary Grenade Launchers. And although they're not on the top 10 currently, there will be a buff to grenade launchers next season, which is like in like a week and a half or something. And these will definitely do a little bit better. Although I don't think they'll be the raid DPS option because their full ammo damage is still not that significant. Their DPS is pretty good, especially with Explosive Light or Full Core, which is why you see a lot of people grinding out Wendigos this season. Following that at number 10, we have the Anarchy, another grenade launcher which will get a buff next season, which has a very specific interaction, is that it does less damage to bosses. You can see the full ammo damage and DPS is a bit lower. And if you've never heard of this, Anarchy is essentially that weapon where you shoot 2 at a target, which does a little bit more damage with 2 rather than 1, and you switch to another weapon or your super, or you hide behind cover, making it an ideal option for dealing damage and being safe at the same time. A big thing I talk about in these videos is the idea of peak shooting and sustain. If you have to stay in the open to output that level of DPS, you're a lot more vulnerable. Although things like Anarchy or linear fusion rifles or hand cannons, for example, are allowed to go in and out of cover and be a lot safer. And Anarchy is literally the king of that. You can pair up Anarchy or Wither Horde with another option at the same time, dealing damage with both options at the same time. And one of my favorite uses is going to be with Starfire Protocol, because with either Wither Horde or Anarchy, you can shoot at the target and of course just start tossing grenades nearly the whole time. Following that at number 9, we have the Xenophage, which also has a similar action with Anarchy, is that it does a lot less damage to bosses. That being said, its DPS, its full ammo damage, especially as a heavy machine gun, very piecemeal usability, the explosive rounds meaning pretty much any range, and of course its ease of use makes it a very, very good option for a lot of scenarios. Just not boss DPS, definitely not raid DPS. And furthermore, it's been out for a very long time since Shadowkeep, and a lot of people do have it. Following that at number 8, the only sword on the list, and definitely by far the best sword, we have the Lament. And the Lament is the best for so many different reasons. Firstly, it has higher impact than any of the other swords other than Bequest, which is weird. I don't know why it has more impact. It has even higher damage with the Banshee's Wail effect. You just charge up that chainsaw, you swing 3 or 4 times, and then heavy attack, which is incredible burst damage, some of the highest in the game, which is very easy to do. And on top of that, the Banshee's Wail also heals you, making you a lot more survivable at close range. And on top of that, it also has barrier rounds, which most people are not bringing a Lament into a Nightfall, considering to use it for barrier rounds, but it can do. And lastly, a big part of swords that a lot of people overlook is that you can block damage with swords, which actually block a significant amount of damage for basically free. Although I will say that swords other than Lament may need a bit of a buff, because most of the time they're not worth using at close range. The fact that we're using linear fusion rifles on bosses that can be hit at close range with Lament should tell you that swords are not in the right place. Following that at number 7, we have the Parasite. In my opinion, one of the more underrated weapons that I definitely think I should be using more often. First of all, some of the highest DPS in the game, very, very good burst damage. And if you've never heard of it, essentially as you get kills with your weapons, you get stacks for Parasite. The higher value enemies, i.e. regulars are 1 stack, orange bars are 5 stack, the faster you charge that up. And once you get to 20 stacks, you're doing a very considerable amount of DPS. And if you get 20 stacks every time, full ammo damage at 2.2 is higher than that of Anarchy. However, obviously in sustained DPS phases like in raids, you're not going to see Parasite because it's just too quick and you need enemies. This is definitely one of those full ammo damage, easy burst options for Nightfalls, or specific very short DPS phases like Atrax on Deepstone Crypt. And I think it also gives you a damage bonus, is that right? Yeah, I think, yeah, so taking damage from your own worm projectile, if you just want to fire one at the ground, as long as you don't have stacks, because that will kill you, you can actually get a damage bonus, which is weird. A damage bonus? I love damage bonuses. Following that at number 6, we have the Deathbringer, a weapon that perhaps you've not really thought about before. And in my opinion, very underrated. Definitely going to be, though, a poor man's Galahorn. And if you can get those maximum amount of damage, especially with the Catalyst, you can get that a lot easier. Its DPS and full ammo damage is very close to that of Galahorn. And furthermore, you don't require 30th anniversary in order to get it. This is just a Shadowkeep quest. But obviously, we'll talk about Galahorn a little bit later, is definitely going to be a lot better. Up next at number 5, we have the legendary rockets. Specifically, my favorite are going to be the high impact frame and the precision frame. And both of those have a good blast radius, handling, and reload speed, as well as precision having built-in tracking. But in the end, as long as you can get the damage output with perks like impact casing, explosive light, lasting impressions, cluster bombs, etc., that's most of what you're gonna need. And when it comes down to it, its DPS on legendary rockets are actually pretty good, but the full ammo damage is a bit middling. And one of the bigger advantages, and the reason why we see these as often as we do, is gonna be Galahorn, because any of your teammates with legendary rockets will get Wolfpack rounds. And so you'll see a lot of teams with one Galahorn, the rest with legendary rockets, and those guys can use an exotic like Arbalest, or Witherhoard, or Ariana's, or something else. And if you don't know, Galahorn's damage, more than half of it comes from Wolfpack rounds. Even though it did get nerfed, we'll talk about it a little bit later, it is still the king, and it makes these legendary rockets even better. Not to mention that blast radius really clears the room. That's what I say about my farts. Up next after that at number 4, we have the Grand Overture, a weapon that I made fun of for quite some time and is technically still annoying to use, is a lot better. And even back in Season 16, this thing had really good full ammo damage. But the clunkiness and annoyingness to charge it up and then maintain the fire was just annoying. And since then, they've buffed it a number of times, including damage buffs to the missiles, making the missiles the highest DPS option in the game. And furthermore, Grand Overture is the highest total ammo damage in the game. Way more than that of Lament, that of Bequest, that of Anarchy. It is just so much higher than everything else. That being said, I think the combination of full ammo damage, which technically requires sustain, and the ability to burst damage when you need it is really strong. And I definitely think you should think about it in your loadout more often. So much so that even on Atrax, instead of Parasite or Lament, a lot of people will use Grand Overture, because technically, if you can get the shots right, is better DPS. And the last thing I want to say is that the full ammo damage on just the missiles, as long as you get 60 missiles, is 1.6 million damage. That's better than 95% of all heavy weapons in the game. Probably more than 95%. And that's just the missile part. Definitely don't underrate the Grand Overture. Following that at number 3, the King of Rockets, definitely my spirit animal as of Titan main, the Galahorn. And to be fair, it has pretty much everything you'd want a rocket to have, and then some. First of all, it has way more damage because of its Wolfpack rounds. More than half the damage comes from the Wolfpack rounds. Whenever you get kills with your shots with the Catalyst, it also spawns more Wolfpack rounds, making it decent for ad killing. Catalyst also gives it 2 shots in a tube, making much better DPS. It also has higher reserve, so has 8 rockets rather than 7. It has built-in tracking and proximity detection, making it very easy to hit your targets. And it also gives your legendary rocket using teammates Wolfpack rounds. There's just too many things in one weapon. The only downside with Galahorn is the fact that first of all, it's an exotic, it requires a 30th anniversary, and once you run out of rockets, which is 14 seconds later, you're out of ammo. The Galahorn's like a Bugatti. It's incredible until you run out of gas. Up next at number 2, we have the Precision Linear Fusion Rifles, or specifically Taipan, Reed's Regret, and Cataclysmic, all of which have really good damage perks like Firing Line, Bait and Switch, Vorpal, Clown Cartridge, Triple Tap, and 4 times the Charm. And to be clear, all of these have their place depending on what you need. Firstly, Taipan is probably going to be the most popular option, as that it's very easily craftable from that one quest, and it has Triple Tap and Firing Line, as well as Vice Stinger, which does give it higher magazine a lot of the time. Although if you have a solar base build, or you don't have teammates, because Firing Line depends on teammates, the Cataclysmics bait and switch may be a lot better. And furthermore, technically, Taipan is Void, Cataclysmic is Solar, Reeds is Stasis, so if you're going for Fontamite, Elemental Well stuff, it may depend on what you're using. And an important thing to note about these precision frames is that they're going to be a lot easier to keep on target versus the aggressive frames, which are obviously at number 1, we'll talk about in a little bit, obviously because of their DPS and their full ammo damage, but if your target's really far away or hard to hit crit, like for example, Spire Star is that middle boss, the Harpy, you can get pretty far away. Precision ends up being better a lot of the time. A lot of people might have thought Bait and Switch would be better at the higher end because Bait and Switch gives you like a 35% damage bonus across the board, whereas Firing Line gives you 20% more crit damage. And even then, Taipan with the Firing Line is going to be higher DPS than that of Cataclysmic, although Cataclysmic has more full ammo damage. And the main reason this is because it takes time to fire the other weapons. Although if you're also doing damage with, for example, with a Horde, you may end up doing better in the long run, especially for the full ammo damage. And the last thing I'll mention is that I highly recommend getting a Cataclysmic up to a magazine of 6 because 4th time's the charm will fit perfectly in a magazine of 6. It'll allow it to trigger twice before reloading, which is 10 shots before reloading. Whereas triple tap on Taipan will get 1 shot. And finally, at number 1, we have the aggressive linear fusion rifles. More specifically, we have the Fire and Forget and Storm Chaser, both with incredible perks like Vice Stinger, Focus Fury, or Firing Line. Firstly, let's talk about Fire and Forget, which is a current season craftable option, which is really nice. You can get exactly what you're looking for. It's also a Vice Stinger origin trait option, which allows you to randomly fill the magazine per precision hit, which if you don't know, Taipan precision hits are 10% per shot, collectively 50 to 60%, and Fire and Forget will actually add up to 85%, probably because it's harder to get hits on, which could mean you could actually not reload the entire time you're doing DPS with Fire and Forget. And furthermore, it also has Focus Fury, which is technically inferior to that of Firing Line, but doesn't require teammates, but it also gets extended because Vice Stinger will keep filling the magazine, allowing Focus Fury to last a lot longer. And furthermore, it's also a stasis option, and with Supreme Wellmaker being so easy and so right on point on the well or the bubble right when you do DPS, makes Fontamite very easy to use. If you don't know, Fontamite requires an elemental well matching your subclass on matching the damage type of that weapon. On the other side of the coin, we have Storm Chaser, which is an arc option, which will match up with the arc Fontamite stuff. It is Firing Line, making it a lot simpler and easier to use, and definitely not based on chance, and it also has Clown Cartridge, which makes it a lot bigger magazine as well. Both of which are doing incredible amounts of DPS, incredible amounts of full ammo damage, and can do it from incredible ranges. It is obvious why linears are getting a nerf, and it's these two guys right here. And the last thing I'll say is that Fire and Forget has the option of Chill Clip, although not technically a boss damage option, is really fun and really good at crowd control. So don't overlook Chill Clip, it's one of the best perks in the game. And of course, a big thank you to my patrons on Patreon. Specifically, a big thank you to Mom and Dad, Kipper Shaw, Robert Strayer, Waffle, Monday, Steve Box, New Panther, Case Reagan, and William Pearson for their support on Patreon. That's it. Hope you guys did enjoy. My name is Dychronic, and I'll see you guys on the next one.